into why we're really here today, I wanted to say that so often people do not understand empowerment from a spiritual point of view, and that's part of the psychic realm of spirituality, using the spirit in our lives instead of trying to do it just on our own. Empowerment from a spiritual approach means it is faith-based, and I am not doing this through behavior modification, and a lot of programs out there use behavior modifications and say, and that's why I have a real problem with domestic violence, is that they change the behavior, but it's superficial. They haven't gotten to what's below the behavior. And so because of that, it doesn't last, and then the behavior comes back. They've only put a Band-Aid on it. So what I'm talking about today is below the Band-Aid, okay? And it takes faith. That's the power that really makes the difference. It is also means it is based in what is. In other words, it's the truth, it's the reality. Now, everybody has individual truth, but there are also universal truths. And that's what we're talking about today. Not beliefs or judgments. Now, we can all have different ideas and opinions, and that's perfectly fine. But there are some things that it is not based in opinion. Some things just are, and that's the way it is. And when we look at those things, we actually rise above opinion, rise above judgment, and see it. We're separating the trees from the forest. So in doing that, on your sheet is a white paper, and it has some lines at the top. This is a work page to help you. You can take this with you when you leave. You don't have to use it if you don't want to. But I want to present a couple models for what works and give you some information on how to change your attitudes and things that are getting in the way of using that power in your life that is real, not just controlling or manipulating the other person to get what you want, but doing it from a source of love and harmony, and doing it from let's come together and do it for the goodness and best of everybody. And that takes us out of being a victim. All right? So what we're looking for is on the first line that you have is honesty. And that's the first thing that you have to remember in any living situation. How many in here ever saw the movie Liar, Liar? Okay. You can see what happens when you are not honest. The rule of the universe is honesty. And without that, you are not cooperating. And your life is going to fall apart and get disastrous, and things get worse and worse and worse until you finally have to get honest. When you start getting honest, then you can say, I'm living in faith. I need to turn to a higher power, a God, spirit of the universe, a creative intelligence, whatever I choose to call that, and have faith in that for my life. Because the bigger the house, the fancier the car, and the more money in the bank account is not helping my life. My example is that this was several years ago, 20 years ago, we were making $100,000 a year, and my ex-husband and I had a business. And I taught school, and we had this business, and they were the most miserable years of my life. Inside, I was in pain and misery, and it was not fun. Money does not give us happiness, and that's what this is about. So, in my experience, I was in a 30-year battering and abusive marriage, and there was no hope. I was a hopeless person. And I believed that, and that's why belief systems lead me astray. It's like they believed the earth was the center of the universe back in the old Middle Ages. But, of course, that was proven wrong later on. And so just because we believe it doesn't mean it's right. And I had to come to understand there's always hope. There is always hope. A minister said, well, with Jesus Christ, there is always hope. And, all of a sudden the light went on, is I had seen this from an emptiness rather than a fullness. All right? So the hope is always there. And if I have all these things in my life, then I need to take action. Now, the problem with my life is I had gone through with dishonesty. I had lied to myself about many, many things. Now, it was mostly out of ignorance and just plain uninformed. My mother was paranoid schizoid, and she grew me up with her experience and whatever, and I did not know I was living all these lies as truths. You know, at one point or another through the action part, I discovered, oh, I'm living in fantasy land where the prince will come along and kiss you and you'll live happily ever after, you know. And I had to change that type of thinking. I went to church every Sunday. I looked good. I sang in the choir. I taught Bible school. And I thought, well, how come I come home and still get beat up at night? This is a battering and abusive marriage. That's why most of the domestic violence programs do not work. They don't get past the superficial into faith. You have to have a power that's real, not just your own. I didn't have hope. I tried suicide. My husband tried to kill me. My life was hopeless. So you can see why I called myself the great victim of all time in those days. I really was victimized. I was victimized by other people and the lack of power in my life and the lack of honesty in my life, and I never took action. Not minus for me. It was lack of action was scary. It was impossible. What if I made the wrong choice? That was my perfectionism. I didn't know action was actually healthy, and to not make choices was actually working against me. So taking action is a very powerful thing. And I just slid through life. I did not choose the marriage. That's a long, interesting story. I did not choose the college I went to. I did not choose the job I had. In '61, if you were a breathing person with a teaching certificate, you got hired. They needed teachers. It was that simple. The superintendent from school shouted down in the choir one day, "Marilyn, you need a job?" You know, I was emotionally 3 years old and I couldn't go for an interview. I had shut down at the age of 3 when my dad beat up my mom. People do not understand how domestic violence starts from genetic, hereditary, and very, very early stages. If that mother's in fear carrying the baby, that baby's born in fear. And so, you know, these things just, my life was a disaster before I ever got to first base, so to speak. And I had to say, I am willing to become as honest as I possibly can. I found out that that's how they figure out how you belong in an institution for the mentally ill. The more you lie, the more insane you are. So if I was going to be sane, I had to be as honest as possible. And today I try to be as honest with myself and others as possible. If I'm not honest inside, I can't be honest with you. So I always tried to be honest with you, but before I didn't know anything about me. Today I have made came to believe that a power is going to help me that's invisible. Faith is invisible. And that power of love, you know, is very powerful. Fear takes away my power. So if I'm up here in fear, I'm giving away my power. And that's what a victim does. They give away their power. So I at one point finally decided, what do I have to do to quit giving away my power to other people in situations that I had to start living in, finding out what love was about. I really didn't know what love was about. Okay, the nice thing about hope is I can just say, now I know that this is there and I can accept it, okay? I can make the decision to have hope in my life. It's a decision. I don't have to accept the fact that life is going to treat me terrible, horrible, and awful. And that's how I was raised. I was raised that everything is terrible, horrible, and awful. Today I believe that the goodness of the universe supports me in all things. Complete turnaround. But it's powerful because it's true. The truth will set me free. And when I get into the positive in each of these parts of the model, then I am really a powerful person. And the action, which I didn't take any of, is a variety of things. And it will give me good results. And that's what I always wanted in the first place. I could not figure out how I'm in this marriage and I try harder and harder, and why is it going down the tubes and I'm more miserable than ever before. You know, I'm trying to make him happy. I'm trying to do everything for the family. I'm trying to be the perfect mother, the perfect wife, the perfect, in my case, teacher. And it's getting worse and worse. You know? Well, the truth is that I was putting my focus in the wrong places. I was putting my focus in the negative things instead of the positive things. All right? And when I focus on the good grows. All right? So I don't have to worry about that. And in changing the negative to the positive, that's called a psychic change. Sounds really difficult, doesn't it? You know, some people go to therapy, and why they're at therapy is to get a psychic change. It's very simple. Everything in your life that's negative, all you need to do is take them one by one and turn it into a positive. Now, sometimes there are programs that help you do that, like 12 steps. Sometimes there's counselors that can help you do that if you can't do it by yourself. Sometimes you need to get really deep inside and see what were some of the things I was raised with that aren't true, I don't have to believe anymore. The reason I tried suicide is I thought my dad was coming after me to beat me up after my mother. As an adult, I know I was his favorite daughter and he would never do that. That's not how he treated me. But a 3-year-old isn't logical. As an adult today, I can see the logic that that wasn't going to happen, and I don't have to live with that reaction. And so we sort those things out and say, gee, that's not part of who I am and that's not real, and I can let it go. And I am living in what is truth, what's now real, not the past, not the future, scaring myself that it's going to maybe something down the road's going to happen, worry, those kinds of things. I can just say this is the way it is. And when I'm in that positive, and right now things are good. Things are always good if I choose to have them that way in my life. Let's take a look at your paper. There's on the second line down, the other part of the model that I needed to change. When I was in Sunday school as a little kid, isn't it funny how things always work the way they're supposed to? I always got the Bible verse that said thought, words, and deeds. All right? And I didn't have a clue why I kept getting that. I thought, those don't they don't go together. I never saw them as being a process or consistent or one evolving from the other. My thoughts, I just gave a reading out there, okay? And it was interesting because the person's thoughts came before what's going to happen. And I could see in the cards that the thoughts are occurring, but the action hasn't taken place yet. So the thoughts, if you have positive thoughts, and start talking with positive words to express that, that's why affirmations are so important. If you say, I can't, you can't. You argue for your limitations. So, and then you act on it. That brings back, you sow what you reap. I got it backwards, didn't I? Are you awake? You reap what you sow. Glad you're here today. Okay, so that's where I always was, and I didn't realize that they were connected. I saw them, thoughts, yeah, I've got thoughts. You know, I talk to people all the time. Didn't think about what I was saying. Usually it was, I can't do this. I don't have money. I don't have time. Those are the biggest excuses of all, you know. They're the biggest lies anywhere. Because we always have money. God always provides the money we need and the time we need. And so my words were not truthful. And deeds, I did not know how to help others, let alone myself. So my deeds were really fruitless. You know, we will know them by their fruits. All right, so thoughts, words, and deeds in my life have changed, and they have to be consistent. They can't be off and left space for one and up somewhere else for another. So that if they follow through, your life will, you know, you plant the seed and it will grow. All right? So hopefully it will be planted in rich soil and grow in a good way. So you have lots of fruit. Now, how can we get these positive things to start working in our lives? There's something we need to understand about the positive attitudes about what we're trying to achieve. All right. We are an energy field. Now, if you're talking about low energy, okay, low energy, people label that. And it's like a musical vibration, if you know anything about music, and the high vibrations and the low vibrations. Instruments like the bass or the tuba would have low vibrations. All right, if we're living in low vibrations, people call that crisis. Who was the enemy to Get Smart? Some of you lived at that time. Who was the enemy to Get Smart? Yeah, she was the gal in there, right. You remember the enemy was chaos. Okay, that dates me. That's an old show. All right, chaos. If you're living in turmoil, all right, now psychologists call that ego. Some people call it fear. See, that's where the victims are. We're living in fear. Churches call it the devil or Satan. Guess what? Satan, get thee behind me. We can move into a higher power. And that higher vibration, that higher energy is God, love, peace. What did they call it in Star Wars? Yeah, the Force. Good. All right. Creator. All right. There's a lot of ways to define these phenomena. All right. Now, the trick is we want to get from here to here so we're not victims. And how do you do that? Well, you have to get rid of what's in the way. All right? And what's in the way are usually things like resentments, fear, our behaviors. All right? When we get up into here, we get out of our victimsville, we start having a whole new perception of life. The clouds have lifted, and we can, on a clear day, you can see forever, okay? Now, I was living in a pretty flat type life, one dimension, okay? 2 dimensions is length and width, all right? 3 dimensions, like an empty box. I was empty. The lights were on, but nobody was home. And I went to school every day like that, and I taught like that. And so that was my protection. It was not safe to be home, because from the violence I'd lived in, it was not something I could afford to let my walls down and be real. So what I found out was, and that's why I wrote the book, is when you start to get real, you have a lot of feelings come out, and they're negative, because you're thawing out. You're not being that frozen iceberg anymore. And when you're thawing out, you want gradually to continue the process till they turn into positive feelings. Now that's what stops most people. They're afraid to feel the negative. You cannot have happiness in your life unless you've gone through the sorrow. And that's one of the biggest reasons people stay victims. They're afraid of the fear, they're afraid of the feelings, they're afraid of things that have happened. But if you have experienced that as a child, it's like the boogeyman is under the bed. But now you're an adult, and you can turn on the light and you can see, where's the boogeyman? So you don't have to stay in the darkness anymore, and you get to feel all these positiveness, and that's some people call the 4th dimension, okay? Now, as you thaw out, if you have no feelings, I called myself the Walking Dead. Okay, and as you thaw out, you're going to get some really high spiritual experiences, because all of a sudden you're going to let this love in that you couldn't let in before. The walls start to go down, and the love starts to come out, and other people's love starts to come in, and it's a little scary at first, and you don't know what to do with it. So guess what? You have this disaster, and now it's the roller coaster. Life is not going to be perfect. I wish it were. And so gradually we have less highs and lower lows. But that's the part my book's about. As you go through the highs and the lows, to realize that in the end, the light's at the end of the tunnel. It's just part of the process of getting out of a victim and growing into your own power. So instead of having good times in your life and bad times in your life, I call them lessons. And when you call them lessons, you take away the power of it having power over you. I hate to use this word, but some people say shit happens. No, it doesn't. Lessons happen. And I learn from them. And then I move on to another lesson. And I don't have to let whatever happens stop me from moving on. Okay, because that's where I'm going to be the rest of my life. And when I pass over, then I have to continue. See, what I don't learn, I just was saying that in a reading. What I don't learn in this lifetime, I'll have to continue learning in the school when I pass over. You understand? Okay, very good. This lady, she seems to be right with me. Wonderful. Okay, so eventually, nothing is good and bad. That's a judgment call. That's up here. Judgment. My belief system. It just is. Okay? This is the way it is. Life happens. It's how am I going to deal with it? Okay? And what made me a victim is as a victim, I did not know how to deal with the lessons. And the lesson, Now, down at the bottom of your page, it says victim cycle, and there's a long line. Okay? Under the line, you can write this little circle in, because it's where we usually get caught up and never get past it, so we can continue moving up closer to God and having a better conscious contact. Okay, we get in resentments, guilt, and revenge. There we go. And we stay in that. And I know a lot about guilt. My mother controlled me with guilt. Okay? When I was getting help at one time, and I was the therapist said, "Marilyn, you have a real problem with guilt." And I said, "What do you mean? I do everything I'm told to." And this is when I'm an adult. Okay? So I had to discover that guilt was one way people controlled me. So I finally learned to say, I'm going to give up guilt. Now, what I also know today is to give up any negative feeling is healthy. And there's a way to do that. So that's one way. The easiest way for me to stop the cycle was to give up guilt. Okay? I don't have to play the game anymore. And Victimsville is a game, okay? You're supposed to take care of me. I'm supposed to do what you say so you'll like me. All these things that go on are games. Now, my story about revenge is not... Some people have really hairy stories about revenge. Getting even, okay? But I was never, ever that kind of person. That's not the bones in my body. So the worst thing I did for revenge is to buy my stepdad, who it took me like 13 years of praying for that man to be able to even have some comfort about the situation. But when you know how you have to give Christmas gifts, right? So instead of the expensive, nice green shirt, he wanted a green shirt, golf shirt, or the medium-priced, okay golf shirt, he got the cheap, ugly. That was the worst revenge I could do. Okay, so revenge, what goes around comes around, and I didn't want that stuff to come around. In fact, what I discovered is, one day I'd asked my ex-husband for help, and I didn't know how to write a healthy note in those days, so it backfired on me. And I stood in front of the refrigerator, the one I got still today, and I screamed, I said, "God, what am I sending out that's coming back?" And that's when I started to understand, I tried so hard to be this good person, but it's what you didn't see that I was sending out. The resentments and the things from the past that I hadn't dealt with, the things that I hadn't uncovered, that stuff was going out. It's like faith, it's invisible. And I could look like I was being this wonderful person. Oh, I was the mark of a wonderful teacher. I dressed out of Nordstrom's. I don't today, but this was out of a discount store. But the point... I love to go to those places today. My friend said Nordstrom's used to be a spiritual experience for her, but today she has, you know, that's not number one in her life anymore. But the point is, I don't choose to have those things backfire on me anymore. So I don't perpetuate them into action anymore, because I don't choose to sabotage myself, okay? What you send out will return. I choose to send out more love today than fear. I, in fact, enjoy sending out more love today than fear. 15 years ago, I was walking fear, guilt, and shame. I have totally changed. All right. What I know today, in doing that, This was the fear, guilt, and shame. And this is the real me. Love, caring, giving, service. That's who we all are. We don't have to live in this bondage. That's God's message, is to let go of this. It's a big lie. Okay? We can let this go and move that circle to, for all that, put it on, transpose it, or make them I can't think of the geometric term right now. Congruent. Take the one, this is what I was hiding behind. I was hiding in that fear, guilt, and shame. And I don't have to hide today. I can be the real me. Who you see today is what I am. Not before. I was afraid of who I was. I didn't want you to know my dad beat up my mom. You wouldn't be my friend. Big pretend. You know, the pretender on television? I love that show when he walks in at the beginning of the show and the lady's in bed for the hospital and are you the doctor? And he says, well, today I am. Well, today I was the teacher, and another day I was the perfect student, and another day, and I could pretend to be anybody you wanted me to. I'm the great pretender. I loved it when that song came out. And I loved the book, because that was my theme song. Okay? So, taking a look at resentments on your paper. We're going to clean that part from the bottom. How do you get to the top? How do you get into that peace and love? Well, you have to look at what's blocking it off in your life. What's between your two ears that's stopping it, okay? Does anyone feel comfortable to give me a resentment in their life? That what's bothering you? Resentment is anger that you feel over and over, and it's taking rent-free space. You go someplace and you're thinking about Aunt Harriet who didn't invite you to the family dinner. And you're mad as you know what, because you're part of the family. How come she didn't invite you, And it could be that she just absolutely slipped her mind. She's losing her marbles. She's 80 years old, and she couldn't remember. And it had nothing to do with you personally. But does somebody have a resentment they're willing to share? Something that you just can't seem to get rid of. It just kind of hangs in there. Okay. Okay. That's an excellent one, because that's one most of us have. All right, she's talking about her father giving her low self-esteem, and it stayed with her for many, many years, and obviously it's still affecting your life, so that's a resentment. All right, low self-esteem from father. That's what you said, right? All right. Now, that can eat us alive. Guess what? That's what cancer is. It eats us alive. And whatever the resentment is where it eats. Okay? So if you get rid of these things, you're going to be healthier. That's why when my class in holistic health is very good, because you can identify what's eating at you. And various things that are bothering you, and you can get rid of these things. All right. Now, that happened. It's in the past. There's really nothing you can do about the past. All right? We can't change the past. Now, what are you demanding that he do? What are you saying that he should have done to make you have good esteem? How should he have done that?
Giving me more feedback and encouragement.
Feedback and encouragement, you said. All right. Now, we are demanding things from people. That's just, you know, so often in families, that's the way we're brought up. Empty the garbage. We don't say, will you please empty the garbage? We say, empty. We demand, okay? Now, that goes against the universe. So we are asking something that's impossible. So we might as well look, if on your worksheet it says resentment, demand, how can you turn it around to cooperate with the universe so that you are seeing it from a point of view that will bring you into harmony? Instead of separating yourself from God and what's going on from the past, how are you going to change your perception to line into the truth? What's really going on? What's the word that it says? Right, appreciate. Okay. What can you appreciate about your father that you can start focusing on so you will not have that resentment anymore? Okay, obviously you don't have a relationship with him if you have this resentment. But how did you get here in the first place? Louder? I can't hear you. All right, well, what about this is a stepfather? Okay. Are there some problems that go along? I had a very difficult stepfather. He turned out to be the devil incarnate in my life. Am I getting close? Okay, that was one of the biggest lessons I've had to learn. In this case, I had to understand so I'm trying to get you to respond because it's better if you can.
I also have resentment in my mom because I never knew this until I was 18, that he was actually not my real father. So it kind of all goes back.
Okay, so he was acting out the part of your father, but you didn't know he was your father.
Yeah, I figured he was my real biological.
So that's where your resentment is. So you were lied to. Okay? You wanted the truth. T-R-U-T-H. You wanted the truth, and you didn't get the truth. Okay. But in the meantime, what happened? He wasn't your real father, and you didn't know that, but what happened in the meantime while he was raising you?
It was kind of a separation of how the love and how he treated like his other kids, his real biological kids from me growing up. So there was a lot of difference.
So you weren't included. You wanted to be included. Okay, it's starting to get more clear to me what's going on here. You felt left out, unloved, abused.
Yeah.
There was sexual abuse? No, abused.
Yeah, verbal.
Verbal abuse. Which is very painful. And learning to not be a victim, that's what we're trying to overcome, okay? And as you start to get your love coming inside, instead of the verbal abuse being so strong inside, you're going to overcome your victimization. That's what I help people do. All right, you still have missed something that you could focus on that's positive that will change that around for you.
See, I've noticed how unhappy his life is and how he portrays like he's really in a happy relation and a happy life, but in actuality he's really a miserable man. And how I get out of it is I I started becoming him. So I'm changing my ways, not being the way he is and so negative.
Okay, he has become an example of how not to live your life. Is that what you're saying? Okay, you can appreciate. That's what I was saying. Life is about lessons. Now, she doesn't have to spend the rest of her life going around, poor me, poor me. She can say, I had a lesson from my stepfather, and at this point his life is not real. He's pretending to have a happy life and it's not, and I don't have to do that. I get to find out how to be who I truly am and enjoy. Life's about enjoying, you know? That's what it's all about. And so if you can learn from that lesson, you have just gotten a college education without having to go to college. Some people never learn this. Some people never learn that what has happened to them has a lesson and I can go beyond it. Okay? And the thing that you can also appreciate from the low self-esteem is that you always are loved by somebody. Who's that? Okay. Her mother loves her. And there's also somebody else that loves you. And this lady offered God, okay? So you are well loved. And just because you had a problem with one person. See, we put all our eggs into a basket of a person instead of looking at the big picture of God loving us. This person might not love me, but that's okay. You know, they're doing their best. But God always loves me, and I just have to look for a bigger picture of who's loving me. Because some people can't love. My ex-husband was a psychopath. He couldn't love. All right? My mother was paranoid schizoid. It was impossible. And I had to learn how to love myself and have God love, His love grow in me and blossom so I could help others learn how to do that. And that's a huge lesson. In fact, that's a very great gift, to learn to love yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. And I walked out of church and I said, I knew the minister from high school, and I said, how do you do that, Carl? I said, I hate myself. And he thought I was kidding. I wasn't kidding. Okay. Fear. We're running a little slow here. Does somebody have a fear that they would like to share with us? Thank you for your participating. Did that help?
Yeah.
You feel some comfort in that? You can pray, and also pray for him. The best thing you can do for an enemy is to pray for them. And it doesn't help them as much as it helps you, believe me. I prayed for my stepdad for 13 years plus, and I finally have come to terms with it that I don't have the resentment. It's just, okay, it was a huge lesson, a biggie. Does somebody have a fear? Do you have a fear?
I'll just give a general one. Big fear of earthquakes.
Fear of earthquakes. Well, we live in an earthquake zone, so I can understand that. I have earthquake insurance. All right. Is there a cause for this? If you're looking at your worksheet, it says fear, and you can put down any fear, and then you need to know where the fear came from. Where did this fear come from?
Probably going through earthquakes, as a child. Here, the couple that we had here.
Well, and that's a good example of the boogeyman under the bed, okay? As a child, we misperceive. We are without strength and tools and being protected, especially in some families. Some families have, if you're home with your family, it's probably a little, they can put your arms around you or say get under the bed or in the doorway or whatever works in your house for earthquakes. But it's very, very scary. You know, our feet are on the ground, and they aren't on the ground anymore. So we lose that sense of security, okay? And to supplement, see, that's where all our problems are, is we're looking for security in other people, places, and things. Now, she has a sense of insecurity in the ground, so to speak, her foundation. All right? So you have threatened instincts. Threatened. Now, when we have threatened instincts, that affects different parts of us. As you'll notice on, I'm going to shorten this up a little. As you notice on your worksheet, it'll mention self-esteem, relationships, emotional security, various kinds of things that feel threatened. And we can mark them off and say, yeah, that scares the heck out of me, right? Now, if you notice on the last column, it says, where are we selfish? What is the opposite of fear? What? Love. That's a great way to put it. Okay, there's another word we can use. Where's that love come from? What?
Courage.
I didn't hear it.
Courage. Courage. Courage.
Oh, courage. Exactly. Exactly. What's another way to put that? Happiness. Great. Huh? Strength. Terrific. You guys are thinking. Well, hope. All of those will work. I tend to say faith. If you're living in faith, you're trusting the universe, you're trusting the goodness to support you in all things. All right? So, do I need to feel threatened? I'm not trusting God. See, it's selfish. I'm trying to take care of it instead of saying, God, thy will be done. Okay? Am I dishonest? Yes, I'm being dishonest. Why? Why am I being dishonest?
Being afraid of something that you can't control.
Exactly. It's in God's control. There's only certain things you can do, and that's change yourself. You can't change an earthquake. You think you can? Try it. Okay. Selfish, dishonest, self-seeking. Well, sure, we're self-seeking. We want to be safe in an earthquake, so that's pretty obvious. And the last one is, who are we being inconsiderate of? Who are we being inconsiderate when we live in fear? Everyone plus, someone said it over here. Yourself, thank you. Because all of this is between your two ears, and it works against you to separate you from God. And so you are doing yourself the biggest disservice. And if you've heard of growing into oneness, which is one of my classes, we need to get rid of that so that we can become one with the universe. And we have to think of ourselves. Of how are we thinking again, thoughts, words, and deeds, all those things. We are doing ourselves a disservice. Works against us. So, because we needed, I was going to ask people too that wanted to talk to those that wanted passed over, but I will finish this up with something, and if you want to stay, I can do that, or we can, at my booth, I'll just do it for free. People act off feelings, okay? And I want to explain. See, that's where the fear comes in. Oh, I'm feeling afraid, or I'm feeling resentful, right? Wrong. You don't need to. You can change your feelings. And in changing them, we have to look at feelings are a yardstick. Just because you are feeling one way doesn't mean that's who you are. It means it's an electrical current going through your body that has to move on. And when it moves on, that's when the negatives in that little box change to positive. The plus follows it. If you have a negative and it moves on, the positive current will come in, and you can change your feelings. So you say, oh, I'm feeling resentful. Now I'll look at my little chart. How can I change that into a positive? You can change your feelings. Oh, I'm feeling fearful. That's the yardstick. But then I take the action, not because I want to take the action. And that's where people get hung up. We don't change because we feel like we want to change. We change because that's the only way for our spirit to grow. And we say, oh, if I'm feeling good, praise the Lord, or celebrate in any way that works for you. You know, life is to enjoy. All of this is about getting rid of the negative and living in the love and the happiness that you deserve. You are children of God, children of goodness, children of love, and that's your inheritance. Your inheritance is prosperity, abundance, all those things you deserve, and everything that gets in the way you don't is not necessary. And that's what I'm here to tell you is there might be some good times and there might be some times going on the spiritual journey that will be kind of rough, but there's always hope. And you just hang in there, believe me, and it just keeps coming, but that's okay. It's so well worth the reward of having that love inside and sharing it. And and one of the ones I said, being of service. The way you keep this and the way you continue to spiritually grow is by being of service to others. That's like volunteering to help in your church or your community, your neighbor, whatever works for you. A friend might be in need, somebody sick might need a meal cooked, whatever works, just be there to help others. You'll be surprised how when you pass on your love to somebody else, you grow. You are actually, I'm getting goosebumps again, you grow more by helping somebody else than you'll ever know. And that's how you come out of being a victim. You will no longer be down here with crisis and chaos. You will be up here responding. Oh, that's the rest of the victim cycle. You, instead of react, you respond in strength with God's love. What is the most loving thing I can do for myself and others? You know, it's very simple. So I'm so glad you're here today. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer them. I had a couple more things, but we ran out of time. I'm an ex-school teacher. I always plan for more than necessary. And because if the kids did it in 5 minutes and I didn't have something for the next 5, I was stuck. So I had to be more than ready. Glad you were here. You were a wonderful audience, and give yourselves a hand for being so good. Thank you.